Bienvenue à tous. So, sehr geehrter Herr Vorsitzender des Verteidigungsausschusses, lieber des Bundestages, lieber Thomas Röwekamp, Madame la vice-présidente de la Commission de la Défense nationale et des Forces armées de l'Assemblée nationale et présidente également du groupe d'amitié France-Allemagne de l'Assemblée, chère Sabine Thillaye, que je remercie tout particulièrement d'être venue spécialement de Paris partager ce moment avec nous. Sehr geehrter Herr Professor Dr. Wolff, Monsieur le directeur du département économie de France Stratégie, cher Monsieur le professeur Grégory Claeys, dear Professor Monika, whom I want to thank for moderating our panel discussion, chers amis du Centre Jacques Delors, ladies and gentlemen who are here with us at the embassy, but also following us online, and I hope you can hear me. Mes chers amis, it's a great pleasure for my team and for me to welcome you all to the French embassy on this very special occasion, as we are gathered here for a panel discussion on how we should invest in European defense and the role of the Franco-German partnership in this respect. I'd like to start by expressing my warmest thanks to Dr. Wernert and Dr. Nguyen from the Centre Jacques Delors and our friends at the Hertie School for organizing this event in close cooperation with the embassy's economic department, cher Jérôme. It's always a pleasure to work with you, and a special word of thanks, of course, to our speakers. Madame la vice-présidente, chère Sabine Thillaye, c'est également c'est un honneur tout particulier, je dois vous le dire, de vous accueillir aujourd'hui, quelques jours après l'honneur que vous m'avez fait en m'invitant à venir parler devant le groupe d'amitié de l'Assemblée nationale, réuni conjointement avec celui du Sénat. Et merci de l'amitié que vous nous faites. Je remercierai également dans un instant Monsieur Röwekamp. I will be brief, and I'd like to convey 3 messages to you this afternoon on the important issue you're debating today, with no other ambition than to put things a little bit into perspective. Number 1, Europe is confronted to an unprecedented accumulation of threats that are here to stay and that call for a strong European and therefore Franco-German response. I'm of course thinking of the Russian aggression against Ukraine and of the immediate and growing strategic and military threat that Russia is now for Europe. Europe is indeed threatened by an even more asserting Russia that shows increasing willingness to test our resilience and readiness, the unacceptable violation of Estonian airspace by Russian fighter jets, and the intrusion of Russian drones into Polish and Romanian airspace last month, to take only these 2 examples among many others, have clearly demonstrated the dangerous reality that we are now facing. There is an unprecedented and ongoing Russian threat at Europe's borders, let's call a spade, for which we must be, ladies and gentlemen, prepared. Und ich möchte betonen, sehr geehrter Herr Vorsitzender Röwekamp, ich möchte betonen, wie geehrt wir uns fühlen, Sie hier begrüßen zu dürfen. Ihre Anwesenheit ist ein Zeugnis der deutsch-französischen Freundschaft und der entscheidenden Bedeutung, die der deutsch-französische Motor in Verteidigungsfragen hat. Especially, so I was referring, to the Russian threat, to call a spade that Europe is now facing, especially since Russia is also attacking at the same time our democracies and our democratic values with the proliferation of disinformation and destabilization campaigns and the flights of drones in our airspace. It's an hybrid war that is conducted conducted against Europe with ever increasing intensity. In these difficult times for Europe, France has adopted a national strategy, a new national strategy, la Revue Nationale Stratégie, in July this year. The greatest threat is clearly stated in this document, the danger of open warfare against Europe, which would entail the massive deployment of our armed forces outside our territory, accompanied by a significant increase in hybrid attacks on European soil. This is, to make a long story short, a central scenario of our strategy. And such a war would have, needless to say, a tremendous impact on our interests, on European interests, I mean, across the world. We face a double challenge here. We must not only prepare for the threat I just mentioned, but also for the future crisis in 2040 and beyond. However, given the increasing instability in the world, no one knows where this crisis will take place and who they will affect. Will it be in the Sahel region, in the Middle East, the Baltic region, Taiwan, I could add to the list, and add to this the spread of conflicts within the cyberspace, of course. Now, to face these multiple threats, Europe needs to reinvent itself. This is my second message. Why to reinvent itself? Because our European integration process was simply not designed for the challenges we face today, as defense, as we all know, is and remains primarily a national competence as per our European treaties. Effective and efficient deterrence in Europe can only be achieved by taking our joint operational efforts to the next level within the EU, pushing a little bit the envelope of the EU, while at the same time strengthening the European pillar of NATO. Uncertainties regarding US policy are urging us, Europeans, to take more responsibility for ourselves, which in turn will encourage the United States to support us, to continue supporting us. That's why a stronger Europe and a stronger Atlantic alliance are truly the same, the two faces of the two sides of the same coin. In this respect, Ukraine is obviously the most immediate challenge. As driving forces of the EU, France and Germany are committed to simultaneously increasing their military and financial support for Ukraine and stepping up sanctions against Russia. The goal is to increase the cost of the war for Russia, and in doing so, to change its calculus and bring it back to the negotiating table. And the work we are doing together in the coalition of the willing to give Ukraine the security guarantees it needs after a ceasefire or a peace agreement is another, I believe, good illustration of our shared determination. Beyond Ukraine now, and from a broader perspective, as part of the new chapter in our bilateral relationship opened by President Macron and Chancellor Merz, France and Germany have agreed to take ambitious steps for European defense. Let me give you briefly a few illustrations of this. At the end of August in Toulon, at the Franco-German Council of Defense and Security, our two countries reaffirmed their commitment to FCAS and MGCS. In view of the many press reports that can be read on this subject, I would like to emphasize this point. FCAS and MGCS are not just major industrial projects, they also have a strategic significance, and France and Germany together at the highest level repeatedly emphasized, especially in Toulon, their joint determination to have both projects ready by 2040. Our two countries also decided in Toulon to launch a joint missile attack early warning system based on existing and future technologies called the Jewel program. This is an important step forward that would deserve longer development, but I don't have time here, this afternoon, and I want you to come again, so I don't want to be too long. France and Germany will also enhance cooperation in the field of innovation by promoting matured defense innovation projects and technologies and encouraging new partnerships. This could be the start, and in some ways I hope this will be the start of a process towards a European DARPA by comparison with the well-known American agency. France and Germany also have assigned the Franco-German Brigade to NATO's multinational corps northeast in Poland, a strong sign of commitment and solidarity towards our partners on the eastern flank, and I believe also an important strategic signal to Russia. Perhaps most significantly, and I don't want to be too long, but I could develop other examples, our two countries have also decided to formally enter into a strategic dialogue on nuclear deterrence. This is obviously a significant step forward for both countries, and needless to say, a strong determination and signal of our mutual trust. To meet these challenges, Europe also needs to invest more and better, both, in its defense, which raises the question of how to rethink the financing of defense. This is my third and last message, and I know this will be at the heart of your discussions. Germany and France are determined to implement the historic decisions that were made during the June NATO summit in The Hague, with a view to unprecedentedly enhancing our respective and joint contributions to Europe's security. This will require a financing leap that in turn calls for mobilizing the financial cloud of both the public and private sectors. We simply have no choice. The bottom line here, I want to emphasize this point, is that the massive increase in defense spending in our countries over the next few years creates a unique opportunity, a truly unique opportunity to bring our armed forces and our defense industries closer together in a European perspective. We cannot miss this opportunity. That's why we are committed to significantly increasing spending on security and defense in a way that will support the European defense industrial and technological base and allow us to move towards the principle of European preference. European preference is not a bad word. This is a necessity as we speak today. In the same vein, any lasting contribution to Europe's security architecture and long-term defense readiness requires us to reduce our strategic dependencies and to think European, yes, to think European at all stages. In this spirit, France will keep on firmly insisting that any common financing instrument be rooted in a clear European preference in order, again, to boost our European defense industrial and technological base, without which, make no mistake about it, European defense would remain an empty concept. Some has already been achieved in this respect, and the role played by France and German convergence in this matter is always instrumental, as exemplified by the rearm package adopted last spring. It creates, in particular, a new financing vehicle called SAFE. I don't want to be too technical on this. And SAFE is clearly underpinned by European preference principles, and this is good so. As we speak, new public funding possibilities under the European Defence Industry Programme, EDIP, are also being negotiated with strong insistence from our side that this new funding possibility be matched by ambitious European preference criteria. The success of our European defense strategy also relies on our ability to support investment in cutting-edge technologies, many of which, as you know better than I do, are dual-use technologies. The war in Ukraine has indeed shown that we need to invest both in low-tech, mass-produced equipment and in R&D intensive innovation. This is a key takeaway of the policy memos published by the Franco-German Council of Economic Experts that I recommend you read, and which provide some stimulating recommendations from implementing moonshot projects in key areas such as AI, autonomous systems, space, or hypersonic weapons, to creating an ambitious European program of breakthrough innovation in defense. So I'm convinced that Europe's innovation potential is huge, relying on a very dynamic defense innovation ecosystem, as well as a growing appetite, if I may say so, for defense investments. European investors are well aware of this. The French public investment bank BPI France launched no later than yesterday a new private equity fund focused on defense, enabling individuals to invest in cybersecurity and defense startups, SMEs, and mid-caps. The same applies in Germany, where the Federal Public Bank KfW amended its guidelines last spring to further support the security and defense sector. And we all know how new this is for our German friends. And almost every week we receive here at the embassy, requests or offers to develop Franco-German and European venture capital in the defense industry. This is, in my view, a particularly encouraging sign. So I will stop here. Again, many thanks for taking the time out of your very busy schedule to be here with us, either at the embassy or online. And my warmest thanks to all of you also for your commitment to European defense. Merci beaucoup, mes amis.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is working. As I hear, it's a pleasure to be here with you. My name is Monika, and I will be the chair of this excellent panel for the next 1.5 hours. But as you will quickly notice, hopefully, we will very soon ask you to actually also get engaged and to ask some questions to our excellent speakers. But let me start by basically providing a couple of remarks and thanking the ambassador for the excellent introduction basically to the panel. And I can promise you that we will pick up on the third message in particular, and we will try to answer the very easy question, right? How to actually invest in European defense and how to make sure that we are ready to defend Europe in a foreseeable future, because well, quite frankly, we don't have much time actually to prepare for that. And I think that, all here, I'm quite sure agree that there is no doubt that we should invest in European defense and that we should ramp up the capabilities that we have, because we have not enough capabilities as for now, and the capabilities that we have are quite fragmented. So I'm not sure whether we should, really argue about that, because especially in this very city in Berlin, I hope that the message has arrived actually by now. But let me pause for a second, because I think it's really worth, perhaps making an observation how dramatically the debate has changed. And only a few years ago, say early 2022, we would have been asking why Europe should invest more in defense. And I'm quite sure that, especially again in this very city, the question of why would be really prominent back then. But now the question of why has been answered by events, right? There is a certain country in the East that helped us out actually to answer this question. So now we are really talking about how should we invest in defense. And the why question is perhaps not that, well, it's still relevant, but I don't think it needs to be, debated for a long time. But I think that, still translating this urgency that the ambassador has been talking about into practice, into defense spendings, into sustainable defense spendings is a challenge. And that's a challenge not only for Germany and France, but I also say from my own perspective, coming from a country on the eastern flank, Poland, it's also really quite a challenge, also fiscal challenge for Poland and for the other countries in the East. So what we will talk about today is really how to secure the money, but also how to translate the financial resources that hopefully we will have very soon into practical capabilities. And we have a really excellent panel to do this today with us. Something that you really can call an all-star cast of today. We have a mix of politicians and professors, researchers from both France and Germany. And let me introduce the panel in alphabetical order, if I may. And this is quite frankly also very good because Grégory Claeys sits on the right side of me. He is a director of economics department at Haut-Commissariat Stratégie in Paris. He previously spent several years at Bruegel and in Brussels, and he holds PhD in economics from European University Institute in Florence. So I think what we have in common is love to Florence, among other things, I hope. Then on my very left, I'm confused with the sides, but I wanted to introduce Herr Abgeordneter Thomas Röwekamp, who has had several political roles in Bremen, including mayor and senator, before joining the German Bundestag in 2021. His work focuses on defense, and you are currently serving as a chairman of the Defense Committee. So I couldn't really think about a better German politician to join us here today. Then, just to my side, we have Madame Sabine Thillaye, member of the French National Assembly and Vice President of National Defense and Armed Forces Committee. Elected in 2017, she has also chaired both the European Affairs Committee and the Franco-German Parliamentary Assembly. And I think this is a very strong testament for your commitment to European cooperation that certainly goes also beyond France and Germany, right? And last but definitely not least, we have Guntram Wolff, professor of economics at the Université de Bruxelles, senior fellow at Bruegel, but previously director of Bruegel, also director of the GAP, so the German Council on Foreign Relations here in Berlin. And Guntram holds a PhD in economics from the University of Bonn. So now you can see what I meant by all-star panel, right? And let me, without further ado, start the first round of questions. Perhaps one more sentence. We will have 2 rounds of questions, and then we'll open up to you. So while listening to our speakers, prepare your questions because I will be coming to you. Okay, I would like to start with the money because, again, we all agree that we have to invest in defense, but I mean, there are trade-offs to be made in every country if we talk about, actually putting the money behind the will that we have. And I would like to start with Madame Thillaye and to ask you, for the French perspective on that. So how can we assure that the financial resources that we need are mobilized and in a sustainable way, So how the high level of defense spending, despite, quite dramatic fiscal constraints of many countries, can actually be sustained long term?
Firstly, thank you very much for the invitation and for organizing this event, because I think it's really necessary to speak about defense. It was a long time that we didn't spoke about defense items in Europe. But I would say the first question is how we should invest in European defense. The main question for me is how should we invest in the defense of Europe? It's not the same thing. And I think we have to change our mindset. It's going on. now it's becoming a main topic. But I think when I'm a parliamentarian, I have a circonscription, comment on dit ça? No. Constituency, thank you very much. In my constituency, it's a little bit difficult to pronounce in English. It's in the heart of France, and we are far away from the borders. And to explain today that we have to spend much more in defense products and capabilities is really, really difficult. And I think it's really necessary that we enforce le lien, pardon, the link between our armies and between our population, to change also the mindset, not for the experts, but also for our population. And in Europe, we need to conduct coordinated military policies and action to ensure our security and protect our strategic interests, to guarantee our sovereignty. And this is another point really important. When our president spoke in 2017 about autonomic strategy, sovereignty, European sovereignty, it was really difficult to make understand this message. I think we progress with the return of higher intensity, and now European Union member countries seems to be see that defense can no longer be a budget adjustment variable. And this is a really good point. There is the time of peace of dividends is over, and we are in progress, because now I think in 2024 defense spending by the 27 EU member states reached in unprecedented 343 billion. That is a 19% increase compared to 2023. But the question is also, are we efficient? And you spoke about fragmentation, and this is a really main point when you see I think we have, if it's true, 20 kinds of aircrafts. We have a lot of frigates, frigates, and this is really a point we have to handle with, because our spending isn't efficient for me. And we have to question the national level and the European level. But the problem with defense is it's the heart of state power when you speak about defense problems. And this is a difficulty for all our European member states. But France, like all European countries, has entered into a rearmament logic since the outbreak of the war of Ukraine. Since 2022, we have calling our industrial players to produce more and faster, making this shift to a war economy. And for example, KNDS has moved from producing 2 Caesar cannons to 12 Caesar cannons per month. Dassault plans to produce 3 Rafale aircrafts per month by 2026. But it's not enough, because it's only the national level isn't enough. We need also the European level, and we need an effort in administrative simplification. That must be really carried out by the Ministry of the Armed Forces to speed up the commissioning of equipment, as mentioned in the new 2027 National Strategic Review in France. But this effort must also be European, In July 2025, the Commission proposed at the European level a legislative package to remove administrative constraints, accelerate investments and improve coordination. But we are not fast enough. It's always, there is a lot of projects, but we have not enough time for me when we have to go faster. Our chief of the defense staff, former chief of the defense staff, Thierry Burkhardt, said we have 3 years to react. 3 years. And we are talking about the same items since several years. This year I participated for the 4th time in the Munich Security Conference, and I have always impression we are always talking about same thing. We know what we have to do, but now the question is, how can we do it? And how can we do it together? Because the budget isn't is reduced for all member states. We need much more coordinating. In France, we have peut-être one good point. We have an effective tool to steer our defense effort. First and foremost, with the Directorate General of Armament, whose main mission is to equip our armed force in a sovereign manner while anticipating future needs and organizing certain dependencies that are chosen rather than endured. And the DGR has a holistic vision to imagine future capabilities with the Defense Innovation Agency. And it relies to the military programming law, the LPM. This is especially special French organizing, a French law to prévoir. Excuse me. Sometimes there are some English words coming. Donc, it's for a previous programming law. We had what we called repair law in 2017, and now it's a law for 2024, 2030, endowed with 413 billions. But this is always not enough, and we need the private sector. As the ambassador said it this week, the BPI France, the Bank of Public Investment, has launched an investment fund, and this fund will the deliberately low entry ticket is starting by 500 euros for a broad public. And this is also a manner to link our defense problems or defense capabilities with a larger public. And this is what we really need. But better coordination, national, European, public and private financing is really what we need. But we need always bilateral cooperation between member states. And I think the French-German cooperation is really a main cooperation. But we need also cooperation, I think, with Poland. Weimar Triangle is also really important, but I think we will speak about it. And perhaps one other focus, we have to decide also where will we produce what. We cannot produce all our needs, our capacity needs in our own countries. We have to decide where is the better place to do it, because our production lines are on the risk to becoming saturated, and we have to avoid a duplication of lines. And this is really difficult because it's perhaps a little bit against the thinking of national sovereignty. And, and we have to change our mindset about this always also. And the last point, we don't speak a lot of strategic mobility. And I think it's a really important point when there is a really risk. How can I replace my militaries and my capabilities from one point to another point? And in the moment, it's a big problem because our roads are not capable to support tanks, and our railway systems is not harmonized. Our administrating rules are not harmonized, and I think this is always an important point, and we don't speak a lot about it.
Thank you so much, Madame. You mentioned so many points, yes. And I will definitely follow up on some, and I know that the other speakers will also follow up on that, on a couple of them. But particularly, you mentioned a couple of times that the mindset, that we have to change the mindset, right? And to be frank, I cannot imagine another, another country in Europe but Germany that actually faces a change of mindset on the go, I would say. And I would be very curious, Herr Abgeordneter, what's your opinion on the German mindset change and shifts and how you see the question of financing?
So at first, thank you very much, Mr. Ambassador, for the kind invitation. Being here is a great honor for me to be part of this excellent panel. And yes, let me express my at this time, I'm very happy that we were able to strengthen our bilateral relationship within some weeks in the past. I think the restart of our relationship is very essential to not only to solve the problems we are talking about today, but also we are facing in our common Europe. And I think the first proof was the common visit in the White House, and was, I think, excellent that we were well prepared in the dialogue with President Trump. And so I'm very grateful for your role in preparing our common visit in the White House. As you mentioned, in Germany, in the past, it was very simple. We only had one problem. That was not having enough money. So, and the belief was, if we could have enough money, we do not have any problems with our defense. And it is not really solved, but money is not the problem we do have at the moment. We had just this morning the debate in our defense committee about the budget, the defense budget for 2026, and we will totally fulfill the NATO goal, and we are back on the track, I would say. So I think it is very necessary to remind that Donald Trump in his first administration addressed not only Germany but Europe to spend the money they promised to NATO, and that's a question of mind change, I think. In that time, we had the political discussion in Germany whether it isn't better to spend the money for education or social questions and so on. And so, yes, I think we are at the beginning of the mind change. Yet it is not so. I think the people in Germany now really know that we do have a problem with peace and stability and our freedom and democracy, but they think that it would be great if there is one who will solve it. Yes, we are in situation in Germany. Wherever we did have a problem, there had to be a solution by the state. And what we have to learn now is, I think that's a difference to France, that this only works if each citizen is also able and willing to support the defending of our democracy, freedom, and stability in Europe. So we have to debate it within the next weeks and months, and in my opinion, years. As you may have heard, we had some discussion about the personnel in our army. Last night we had a very different discussion about the necessity to go on duty service in army. And we have to continue this discussion within the coalition, within the parliament, and especially, I think, within the whole society. So yes, we are facing a lot of challenges in Germany, and it is not only the money. So I think we are facing, in the moment, we are facing three main challenges. The first one is to equip our Bundeswehr, our army, as well as it is needed. And some people say it is not so difficult. You just have to buy some drones and to keep in mind that there is something in the space, but that is not the solution. After a long period of belief in everlasting peace, our Bundeswehr is not able to defend ourselves and is also not able to fulfill the promises we made to NATO in the past and in the current situation. So we do not need only new systems of defense, we need more of all our systems of defense. We do need tanks, we do need planes, we do need ships. Yes, we do need drones as well, and we have to have capabilities in the cyber room and disinformation campaigns and so on, but we also need some original military goods in our army. So we have to scale up this capabilities very, very fast. And let me mention, I think it is not secret. About 70% our military goods we are buying in all our European armies. We are buying in the United States of America. Is not right? Okay, so you can talk about it. Too much our military goods we do buy in the United States of America. and I think this is not the solution for the future, because we do have the knowledge, we do have the technology, and we do have the money as well. And so I think we have to increase our own industrial capabilities in producing the military goods we need. This is not because I don't trust the US administration, but it is, I think it is very necessary to find a European solution for the current challenges we do have. And the good news is we are able to do that. I think that is the good news. We have to change some systems, I think. We have to prove some of our projects. I think we will have the opportunity to discuss later on FCAS and MGCS. I don't want to put it in my first remarks here, but I think those are projects of the old time, I think. We have to discuss it in the new situation of a Russian war in Ukraine. And I think it is not a debate about whether we need a system like FCAS and a system like MGCS. We do need it. That's the future. We have to be prepared in our armies. But we have to, I think, we have to acknowledge that this is no longer only an industrial project. It is a defense project. And it is essential for our ability to defend military escalation within Europe. So we have to hurry up to find a decision whether it works in this situation or not. But it is not a question of industrial capabilities. It is a question of getting fast a very high-level system of air and battleground defense. So we have to work on it. Yes, we have to strengthen our European defense technology, I think. Probably it is wrong again, but I heard that we do have about 160 different defense systems in our European armies. I also heard that some armies of the world do have less systems, but better capabilities. And I think we have to work on that as well. I think we do not need, in Europe, we do not need 12 different tank systems, for example. Probably one or two would be enough to defend ourselves against the Russian war. So I think we have to change our mind as well in the question, what do we need for our common armies, and what can we produce together? Yes, we have to increase our own industrial capabilities. I think it is very necessary. And in Germany, I will close my remarks with only one personal experience. I lived with my family in a very small street in my contingency in Bremerhaven. I think nobody knows it. It's a part of Bremen, but it is a nice city. And in the operation plan of Germany, it is a very high rated harbor, for example, we do have for military operations. But okay, I lived in a small neighborhood. I think we were only about 15 or 18 families. And you can imagine when there is a new family arriving in our neighborhood, it was very well proved by the neighborhood. Yes, so we do have garden parties and anything else. And so there moved a young family in our street, and we proved them on a garden party. And my job was to ask what the man is working, and he answered, "Yes, I'm an engineer." So okay. Which direction of engineer? Yes, it is a little bit difficult, and it is high level, and so on. And yes, I'm working with machines, and okay. And so the debate, that was the end of the debate. They were allowed to stay in our neighborhood. That's the good news. The bad news is, some years later, he told me that he is working for Rheinmetall. And the lesson I learned is he wasn't able to discuss what is his job in Germany, because he assumes that it is not very high rank to work in the defense industry. And this is my conclusion. We have not only we do not have only a debate of increasing our military capabilities. We have to do a debate about increasing the number of our soldiers for as well, not only for the army and for the capabilities we need, but also for the debate within our society, that it is necessary to have soldiers, that this is not only a job as being a lawyer, for example, or something else, so that this is a duty. And this is the second part of mind change we do need in Germany. And the third one is, yes, if we want to defend our country against, for example, a Russian aggression, it is not only a job of the state, of an anonymous state, it is a job of each citizen to do that. And it is difficult to discuss military service duty, military service within the young direction. My children are 28, 25, and 22 years old, and they never had a discussion in school about war, about peace, about Bundeswehr, about army, about NATO. So we have to not only to decide the questions that are laying on the table, we have to debate especially with the younger generation in Germany. Thank you very much again for the invitation and the discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. That was really fascinating, and I really like your overarching approach on how much do we need, what do we need, and how fast do we need this. This is really refreshing coming from a German politician, if I might say that. But I mean, your major point actually that I take for the debate, perhaps for later, is public resilience, because I do think that we don't talk about it enough, both on the academic side, if I may say so, but also on the politician side. And this is across board, so across European countries. That's not only the German problem. But let's take it for later. And now, Grégory, if I may ask you to put some numbers on the table and to put your academic hat and to some right numbers on the table. No. But I mean, let's think about, your perspective. And I know that you've been doing some works on trade-offs between different fiscal possibilities to finance defense. So what can you add to that? Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, indeed, we have been doing some work. Here is a bit of advertisement, a paper we wrote at the Haut-Commissariat in May. I even have a few copies, I think, here, if someone needs a paper copy. Yeah. So let me first, before I answer your question, thank very much the French ambassador for his warm welcome. It's really an honor to be here. Let me also thank the Jacques Delors Center for organizing it and the French embassy for hosting us. It's really, I'm really glad to be here. It's almost as nice as Florence to be in Berlin. No, I'm joking. No, Florence is really beautiful. Berlin too. Okay, I stopped that conversation. First, a little disclaimer that I didn't have to do when I was working at Google. Everything I will say here is my opinion and do not reflect the position of the French government, even though the Commissariat is part of the Prime Minister's office and is the official think tank of the Prime Minister's office. But having said that, I can now answer finally your question on what are the options to finance this huge increase in defense spending. As the ambassador mentioned, and as it was mentioned after, we have really promised NATO to increase tremendously our spending. Our goal now is to increase it to 3.5% of GDP. That's a huge number. That's an increase that we have never seen since basically the 1950s. Since basically we have data in France, we have never seen such a big increase. 3.5%, also the level is quite high. We have not seen that since the Cold War. The last time that we had a 3.5% of GDP in France, it was in 1970. I checked this morning in Germany, it was 1968. So both countries, we never had this kind of level of spending for a very long time. And also we start from a quite low level. Now both countries are around 2%. Germany actually increased it a lot in the last few years, but France has been stagnating at 2% for like 25 years. So it's a huge endeavor to do that. And we will need to find the funds to do it. And that will be quite a bit of a challenge. So to put it into context, let's discuss, and that's what we do also a bit in the paper, how do other countries have done it? And actually we have a recent example of countries who have increased a lot their military spending in the last few years. One of the main countries represented here who has done it very quickly is Poland. Poland has increased its spending from 2.2% to in 2021 to 4.2%. So it means that the good news is that it's feasible, and Poland has done it. How it has done it? It has done it actually by increasing its deficit. If you look at the structural deficit of Poland, it has increased in the exact same period by 2 percentage points. So basically, debt was the answer. Finland has also increased it by more than 1 point. He also did, the country also did it with increasing its deficit. Germany is now doing it, and thanks to the reform of the debt brake that we have been calling for years at Bruegel, for other reasons, it is not, Germany will be able to do it with deficit. So that's good news. However, this country. Yeah, but let's say that these countries at least have something in common, is that they have quite low level of debt to GDP, so they can do it. And actually, if you look at other countries that have done it in the last 150 years, there was a paper published earlier this year on that. They also did it a lot using debt. So debt was always the answer when we needed to do it quickly. Now I want to talk about another problem that my own country is facing is that, unfortunately, compared to Poland, Germany, and even Finland, we have a much higher level of debt. So the public finance situation in France is a bit more complex than those countries, and we will not be able to use the same method to finance our increase in spending. I'm repeating that, but maybe everybody knows, but we have the third highest debt in Europe after Greece and Italy. We have, I think, the second highest deficit in Europe after Romania, and the highest in the Eurozone. So we are, okay, that's so we are not in the best situation to increase our military spending. So how can France do it? And this paper that I mentioned before, we try to explore a bit all the different levels that we have at our disposal, and we tried actually to give some example of how it would work if we are using only one of those levels. Also, it's a pedagogical way to approach the question. So debt, the first one, the one that is used by everyone else, it's going to be a bit complicated because we promised the EU and our European partners to reduce our deficit towards like 2% of GDP by 2030. And now we are at 5.8. So that's a big step. But even if we were to use debt, what it would lead? Basically, it would mean that we would increase our debt that is now at what, like 115%. It would increase up to 140% if we wanted to meet our NATO obligations. So that's huge, and I don't think it's a desirable option for France to use debt. The second one that we explored in that paper is to finance it with cuts in other expenditure. That seems like the most interesting thing to do, and that maybe other countries will recommend us to do. However, I have to say that if you do it only this way, it would lead to drastic cuts in other spendings in France. We calculated that basically we will need to cut by 0.7% per year our other spending, so every year for the next 5 years in order to do that. 0.7% doesn't seem huge, but to again put it in perspective, we have never done it since the beginning of the Fifth Republic, except for 1 year, which was 2023. And 2023, we did it thanks to inflation. So in volume, it was easy to do it because we had huge inflation. So we did it 1 year out of like 70 years. So yeah, we should do that. We should cut other expenditures, but doing it only through that mean will be very, very difficult. The second lever is a tax increase. We calculated that basically to meet our NATO obligation, we would need to increase by 15 billion per year our taxes if we are only doing it through taxes, on top of the taxes that would increase naturally with GDP inflation. But so 15 billion. To give you an order of magnitude, 15 billion is 2 points of VAT per year. So basically we need to increase VAT by 2 points every year for the next 5 years. So 2 points this year, then 2 points next year. So we would go from 20 to 30. So that's huge too. And it would have a very negative effect on consumption and on our economy. So I would not recommend to do that. And because also let me compare it to something else that is very prominent today in the French debate. If you compare it to the Zuckman tax, which its proponents are saying that we could get between 15 and 25 billion per year. Even if that's true, because the detractor of the Zuckman tax say it's more like 5 billion. Even if that's true, if we can get 15 billion per year, we will need to create a new Zuckman tax every year. So this year we create a Zuckman tax for the next 5 years, and next year we need to find another ID, and the year after another ID, another ID. So that's impossible to do it alone through that way. I'm very negative, no? No.
Exactly.
No, but the solution is going to be very simple, you see. So the next lever is to do structural reforms. and I'm in the right place. Finally, I can talk about structural reforms now that I'm in Berlin.
Okay, 1 minute.
So structural reform to increase our employment ratio, which is very low compared to Germany, to the Netherlands, to even to Poland, to the average of the EU, is necessary to increase our tax revenues and reduce our spending. But again, we made some calculation, and if we had to increase our employment ratio, we will need to increase it by 5 points, which is basically the equivalent of 2 million jobs that we would have to create in the next 5 years. Again, to give you an order of magnitude, this is 8 times what the latest pension reform is supposed to do. So huge endeavor, 8 times. So we need to increase, do a reform that we are at the moment already opposing 8 times. To be a bit more optimistic, I noticed that 2 countries did it, increase their employment ratio by 5 points. Germany did it between 2004 and 2009, and the Netherlands also did it between 2017 and 2022. So that's feasible, but it's very, very difficult. And finally, I put a bit my Bruegel hat here back. We could do some European financing. European financing is a good idea because, as I wrote in actually my last paper, the last paper I wrote for Bruegel after I left, actually, I finished it. Defense is a European public good. And so I think it makes sense to have some of it financed at the European level. So it would be good to have some European financing, some European debt, and some new own resources in order to reimburse that debt made for defense. So that's all we have in our list. So what's my solution? My solution is not to do one, because each of those look very difficult on its own. So the best solutions that I can offer is to do a combination of all of this. Because if you do a bit of tax increase, a bit of cuts, a bit of European financing, and a bit of structural reforms, it will still be ambitious, but it will be at least achievable. To give you, if we were doing like 1 quarter per each, we would only need to create 500,000 jobs. That's more feasible. We would need only to increase taxes by 0.5% of GDP. That's okay. Cuts, we would only need to freeze in volume other spending. That could be feasible. So my recommendation is to do everything, to do a combination of everything. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. It's an interesting combination, and I'd say that, many countries probably should listen to you, because it's not only France, right? I mean, the debate is quite similar in Italy, for example. And I mean, of course, Poland could increase debt, but that's not a sustainable solution. So, again, but thank you for that. I am trying to stay optimistic, and I will now advertise a paper that Guntram wrote and published 2 days ago because we are now switching towards, let's say we have the money, okay? So the politicians have delivered, thank you, through the solution that Grégory just proposed. We have the money. How do we spend it, and how do we get rid of the dependence on the US that we have? And what's the right number, if not 70%? Right.
Well, I mean, first of all, thank you so much for the invitation, Mr. Ambassador. It's really a pleasure to be here and to be in this Franco-German combination. I really love it. I used to work closely with Grégory, so I sort of knew some of the arguments that were going to come. And I think it's testimony to Franco-German also research friendship that exists over the years. So thank you for this opportunity. I mean, there's a lot that could be said on the French situation, but I think I want to focus on the defense bit, which I think is at the moment at a really an important crossroad. So what we are seeing is a massive increase in defense spending that was already described. That defense spending increase actually correlates very strongly with the distance to Moscow. Yeah, so the countries that are close to Moscow are really increasing their spending. The others really are not. And one reason, I think you mentioned it, is when you're in the center of France, it's sort of difficult to convince citizens that this is the main issue, right? So we are seeing this very clearly, massive increase the more you go east. Now, there's one country, which is the one where we are currently in the beautiful city of Berlin, where spending increases are really so big, because also the German economy is so big, that it really outmatches now European rearmament in terms of scale. And just to give you that number, we had a procurement tracker in which we looked in detail at Germany's, France's, Polish, and British procurement, military equipment spending. Yes, so it's not the personnel, it's just the equipment side. And Germany in 24 had procurements of around 60 billion, and it's now going to go up. And I mean, you know that number better. It's probably going to be around 80 billion in the next fiscal year. That 80 billion is around the same magnitude as that of France, Germany, and the UK combined. Yeah, so spend. France, Poland, and the UK combined, absolutely. So Germany basically is the one that is doing the big procurement now in Europe, and that's a good thing because we underspend over 25 years. There are all the gaps that we heard about. But it, of course, raises the question, what do we buy, where do we buy from, and does it strengthen the European industrial base or the American industrial base? And you mentioned the 70% number, so there's a little bit of some confusion in some media on this. So the 70% bought in the US is 70% of the imports, right? So among all the procurement spending that we buy abroad, as Europeans, 70 is from the US, roughly 70% is from the US. Poland is a country where this number is much higher, but 70 of the imports, right? But of the procurement, the bulk of it actually goes to domestic industry. And so what this shows is that we do two things. I mean, we basically buy domestically as European countries. France anyway buys French, Germany buys German, the big countries buy domestically essentially. But then there is a little bit, which is sort of 20, 30, sometimes 40%, which is bought abroad. And when it's bought abroad, it's not bought in neighboring European countries, but it's bought in the US. The big exception here is Poland. So Poland's procurement really goes to essentially to the US and to South Korea to a large extent. I mean, and there's very small domestic component only. And so the question is, do we buy too much or too little from the US? And to understand that question, we just published this piece in which we looked at US foreign military sales. So we built a database of all US foreign military sales, sales notifications since 2008. So that's almost 1,200 notifications. You can download them on the Pentagon website, and then sort of thanks to large language models transform them into Excel sheets, etc. So we studied that in detail, and what we see is that Europe becomes the main customer of the United States in the last basically 4 or 5 years, right? I mean, so we really increase buying from the US. And what we buy is actually very concentrated in a few high-tech equipments. And so the dependency problem, I think, is there, and it's concentrated in specific high-tech. It's clearly visible in, of course, fighter jets and air defense, yeah. And there have been increasing nervousness in the European political system about these dependencies, both on the F-35 as well as on the aircraft. You might have seen the Danish government's decision to buy European air defense to the order of 7.5 billion instead of Patriot, the Patriot system, which was clearly a worry about the stability of the transatlantic relation, but also the reliability of the US industrial base to deliver on time. There's been a decision in Portugal to cancel F-35 purchases. So this is a live discussion going on in many, many countries. Now, if I may, I do want to say 2 words about where I'm quite worried in the German case, and since I have the right person to listen to in the here, I do want to make that point. I mean, so Germany, of course, we buy the F-35 and all of that, but I think the one thing where I'm quite worried about is how deeply our systems are equipped with essentially American software. And this is an issue. I mean, which you don't necessarily see in the purchase numbers. So, for example, we are buying, as Germany, I think the spending is going to be well above 10 billion for frigates in the next couple of years. I think the F-127, for example. Now, it's great that we spend money on buying frigates, but these frigates are built by ThyssenKrupp Marine Systems. So you would think, okay, this is not increasing dependence on the US. But then the software running the anti-missile equipment, I mean, is essentially the Aegis, US Aegis system, right? Now, do I think the US will not update that software or make it difficult for us? Well, no, I mean, that's not my baseline, right? I mean, so this is definitely, but I think the issue here is we need to, on these things, we need to think about extreme scenarios. And if there is even the slightest probability that an extreme scenario could materialize, that the software would not be updated for whatever reasons, then that slightest possibility allows for the transatlantic relation to become unbalanced, and allows in a game theory approach. I mean, you can think about this in a game theory. So if there's an extreme scenario that is possible theoretically, I mean, it shapes the outcomes in the middle. And I think it's therefore no surprise that President of the European Council, Costa, and the Director General, DG Trade, Sabine have both said publicly that in the trade negotiation, the decision to sign the deal with the United States was a decision that deliberately hinged on the security dependence of Europe on the United States. So put differently, on the one hand, we are increasing our strategic capabilities, which is very necessary and very important to do it at this stage against Russia. On the other hand, we are sort of increasing some dependencies, which at least I'm quite worried about. Now, what's the way forward? Perhaps my last remark. I mean, I do think we need a strategy of, I mean, Mr. Ambassador, you called it European preference. I mean, as an economist, you never like this, right? Because you like open markets. I would say at a moment of rising defense spending, I think the way that needs to be packaged is we need to say, okay, we are anyway buying lots of stuff in the US and it's gonna go up, but let's say in relative terms, let's reduce it, right? In the percentage, let's reduce the percentage. And let's focus on systems that are absolutely critical, right? And really make sure that they are the respective domestic companies emerging. And that's perhaps the last positive message. I mean, we do have domestic companies emerging. I mean, in the artificial intelligence space, I mean, we have major players around Munich and so on. I mean, many of you know these names. They are, by the way, also now doing collaborations with French companies. So there's, for example, collaboration between Helsing and Mistral ongoing. So I think these are the kind of initiatives where I think the probability of success is quite high if they can know that at some stage demand, and that means in particular German demand, will go to them and not just to the key US competitors. And I think that's where I would put the focus on, yeah, I mean, let market forces play out, but make sure that the demand, which is government demand, at the end of the day, comes also to these European high-tech players.
Thanks so much. That was a longer round, I think. But let me briefly come back to the panel for the quicker second round, if I may. And you have been warned that I will be asking you about the French-German cooperation. I have slightly different questions for both professors here. But I would like to start again with Sabine and ask you perhaps to really focus on, let's say, what would be your top priority for the Franco-German cooperation in order to push Europe forward in terms of defense capabilities? We can talk about FCAS, obviously, but maybe there is something else that you would like to mention here. And then same to you.
it's not an easy question, but I think there were some steps, some good steps in Toulon, because depuis Toulon there is we project a common roadmap that has been established with really objectives. We have some objective of recognition of industrial certifications, which would greatly facilitate joint programs and strengthen interoperability. This is a key point, interoperability. And I think another key point is coherence. We cannot speak only about capabilities. We have to speak about human resources. We have to speak about interoperability, about mobility, military mobility, and because when I have 20 aircraft and I don't have pilots, that is not efficient. And I think we have to think about efficiency and about coherence. And I would like also a map of all industrial actors. I speak a lot with mid-caps enterprises, and they said, okay, you speak about European preference, but we don't know who does what. We produce what, sometimes in Germany, sometimes on the European level. The big ones, there's no problem. But the supply chain, this is another question we have to face, how to bring them together. And therefore we need to know each other really better, and the dialogue is really necessary. Political dialogue to inform each other of our projects. We need also, this is in the moment a problem in France, political stability to make the right decisions, even the right decisions for FCAS and MGCS. We need political positive symbols, and FCAS and MGCS, I think the political willing is there, but we have some problems with industrial players, and this is always the problem in Europe. Are we considering that we have a common destiny, or are we always competitors? We speak always a little bit about mindset, but we have to change also mindset. And another point is, what's the main point? The needs of our armies to defend Europe, or the needs of our industries? That we have to see both together. There is a necessity of economic results, but there is a necessity to give our armies the right capabilities. And I think it's necessary also to focus, not only to focus what's wrong, but also what's right, what was a good initiative. As for me, the AIC 400M, it's a success, the aircraft. It was really difficult in the beginning, but now it's a really success, and France and the United Kingdom are advocating for NATO to equip itself with these aircraft, which are now exploring new capabilities. The problem with FCAS is that we have not the same regard of the need, not the same French regard and the same German regard of what we need. And this is the main problem in the moment. We have in France we have a time problem. We need it for 2040. We need to achieve operational capability for this year because the aircraft determines the airborne component of our nuclear deterrent. This is not the same problem for Germany. Yeah? The timeline is really necessary. It's urgent point for France and for Spain, but Germany places greater emphasis on technology transfer, if I understand it right, and regarding the size of the aircraft. And I think there are a lot of discussion necessary between our industry. But I think it's really necessary to have a success with the two projects.
Thank you. Franco-German tandem. How do we move it?
Yes, let me first reply shortly on Professor Wolff. I was not smart enough to be an economist. I'm just a lawyer and notary. So I'm not used to work with figures. But I think one problem we do have is by buying systems in the US is not only a question of dependency. It is also a question of our scaling our own military capabilities. So when we buy an F-35 fighter jet, we do not only buy a jet, we also buy a US guarantee for defense of our territory, and also to be able to be under to have a nuclear deterrent. So this is not only haptic what we are buying; it is also trust we are buying. And so I think it is very difficult only to scale it in figures. We also have to keep in mind, for example, when we had the discussion about security guarantee for Ukraine after ceasefire, we all know at the moment we know that Europe armies are not able to give an efficient security guarantee to Ukraine without US capabilities. So let us keep in mind, and I do not have only a small signal that they will not be part of common NATO defense. Yes. But they are expecting a higher participation of Europe, not only in money, but also in military capabilities. So yes, we are very dependent, especially in systems and electronic systems from US. But I think we are, that's I think a reaction of the trust we had in US capabilities in the past. So we have to keep in mind that this is not only a question of systems, but also a question of capabilities within European defense capabilities. So, and the second remark I'd like to make is I'm a big soccer fan, yeah. And when Chancellor Merz told that Germany will be the strongest army in Europe, there were no response from France, from Great Britain. So there is no competition, you know. So you spoke about open market and your belief in open market. So yes, I know we are the biggest economy within the European Union, and we do have a special responsibility also. Okay, but to be the biggest army within Europe is a relative question. It's not an absolute question. So we have I think we have to talk about absolute capabilities we need to have within Europe. So what can we do together?
In 1 minute.
In 1 minute. So I think yes, we can. We do have different expectations about probably special capabilities FCAS should have. But I think what we can do is, especially in the future, is a common intelligence. That is really necessary because we are so dependent on US and, for example, Israel intelligence. We do have to increase our own intelligence capabilities, not only in cyber and disinformation campaigns, but also in space. So I think we have to be independent from intelligence facilities in the space. There must be a European solution for intelligence, and there must be European capabilities, for example, in space and in cyber. So that would be my short answer.
Thank you. Perfect. Grégory, your take on that. Franco-German tandem.
Well, it's funny because as an economist, I would have talked initially before this discussion was taking place about how important it is to cooperate and to collaborate from an economics perspective, that is a clear rationale. And I would have talked about, I don't know, like free riding problems, externalities, etc. But now that we are having this discussion of changing the mindset, I realize that before doing that and building the right cooperation and collaboration at the industrial level, we need to do something before. We need to have a deep and common reflection on our military doctrines, which are still very, very different across country and across our two countries. It's very different. So we need to do something quite simple. It was mentioned before that France just had his national strategic review. I guess every country has such a thing, but they are not coordinated. Actually, we just published ours in July, but I have not heard if Germany did the same. So I think doing that at the same time in a coordinated fashion, and having like maybe a European document that summarizes it, and that would be done by the European Commission, where they would basically look at all those national strategic review and ensure that all taken together they are coherent, that they take into account all the others, the risk that other country faces, etc., and that the EU as a whole has his interest taken into account. I think that would be a first step. It's not a grand thing. I'm just advocating for some soft coordination, but just coordinating from a time perspective those national strategic review and having a summary and a discussion about them at the same time at the EU level, I think would be very important, because I think it's really the first step to do that, and this would allow us then to go to the second step. Again, you mentioned in France we have this military programming law every 5 years or something like that. Again, it's done in an isolated fashion. We do it in France. I don't know actually if some countries are doing the same. I hope they do. But doing it at the same, yeah. So I think it would be good if it was a common practice and if it was coordinated. And basically, we could have like something like, again, a document, a military programming document at the EU level that summarize and coordinate all those military programming laws that we have at the national level. And I think going back to what Guntram was saying, I think I fully agree that for a defense industry to really thrive in Europe, they need to have some visibility on demand, and having such a document where we would see which country is going to invest in what, and at the same time it would help them to have a long-term visibility on demand and help them to plan and innovate.
Thank you so much. Guntram, I will give you a choice. You can either answer the question about the Franco-German tandem moving forward, or actually, I wanted to ask you previously about the Weimar Triangle, but I won't. I would like to ask you about Ukraine, because you mentioned, bringing different European partners on board and developing the European reflex that also the ambassador was touching upon. And I mean, we know very well that the only country that actually is up to date if it comes to military capabilities is Ukraine, right? So how can we learn from Ukraine? And again, considering the time, one top priority that we can now do together with Ukraine or learn from Ukraine.
Okay, I mean, so the Ukraine bit is, of course, very important. I mean, Ukraine has, I think by now, the most capable military in Europe with Russia. So I mean, yesterday, I think the commissioner for defense, Kubilius, was in Brussels. Was at an event in Brussels where he talked about, oh, we need Ukraine basically to defend ourselves, and that's the best guarantee. And I mean, of course, if we wanted to have Ukraine to be the one that defended Europe, I mean, then we are talking about a major political thing, which I think is something similar to Article 42.7 of the EU treaties or Article 5 of NATO. So Ukraine would only be ready to step in, if at all, I don't know, in a place like the Baltics, if conversely it would get some guarantees on Ukraine itself. This is I think this is a very important point, and I think it's an interesting point. It involves also the defense industrial base, and so I will sneak my Franco-German answer into this, because I mean, I do think the one thing that we can do and should be doing across Europe is we should integrate our markets more strongly, right? And so basically make sure that defense procurement does not only go to domestic or American suppliers, but to also to neighboring countries. And that means opening up defense markets. That's difficult. EU treaties make it difficult. Article 346. It's politically difficult. But I mean, the real benefits we can get is through market integration, not through government to government administrative coordination on how exactly an aircraft should look like. I mean, that's going to be very, very difficult to do. But if you open up markets and you let companies actually produce the best products, I mean, that's working. And if you include Ukraine into this, Ukraine now has a super successful industry. And it's not surprised that major European players, major German companies also have invested really significantly in Ukraine, because there is the knowledge, there is the battle testing ongoing, etc., etc. So my vision would be for European integration on defense would be really open up markets, include Ukraine, and we call that a European defense mechanism. We published on this for the informal ECOFIN back in Warsaw, yes, in February or March.
Thank you so much. Okay, dear audience, you've been very patient. I overpromised a bit, but we started a bit late, so we also we are going to take 5 minutes from the reception. I hope it's okay. I'm looking at 2. Okay, so I now need 3 questions. Short questions to the point, and please introduce yourself briefly before you ask the question. Alice, I hope that you coordinate the room, because I can't see anything. There is one question here in the front, I think. We'll collect 3 and then we'll go back to the panel, okay?
Hi, so thank you so much. It was a great panel. And of course, thank you to the ambassador and the embassy. My question concerns the response since the beginning of September with the drone incursion on the Polish airspace. This question is for anybody, of course. But of course, we've seen similar events since then. So my question is whether or not you believe that the response from Europe has been comprehensive enough, and if not, what action should be taken to deter further quote-unquote events?
Thank you. Please be brief in your questions.
I even can reply to the question of that guy, because the drone which fell in Poland was similar which fell in Lithuania. It was made from plastic and cartoon, and there's nothing inside. And when Poland launched missile to down this drone, the debris fell on Polish farm.
Thank you for
thanks
the
God. No,
intervention.
my question is about different issue. Déjà vu. I would like to suggest for scholars to prepare comparative studies between what happened in 90s, 80s, and in nowadays. During Cold War, what you are saying was the same. I'm old enough to remember. And now it's also, you are talking about the same things, but in 80s, Mr. Adenauer, yes, came forward, and you have in Germany bright politicians who were able to switch to peace talks. So could you, Gunther, compare peace path of Europe and war path of Europe and impact? And now I just want to say the set point.
We are going to have to rush it, I'm afraid.
Exactly.
Okay,
So,
but
thank you for the question. We got the question, I think.
No, you didn't get, because every commission, the Europe coming with wave of investment. 15 years ago, it was digital. We have to invest into digital. 10 years ago, it was invest in green technologies. Now we are going to invest into military. What are the results? Debt increased 10 times.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so
We
much.
want to give other participants the possibility to ask questions
There's
as well.
one question
please.
here in the
Thank
front,
you.
if I may. But thank you for the question. We'll make sure to consider that. I see Goran, right, raising your hand, and then the fourth question goes here to the front with the lady in the second row. You have Goran on your left. Okay.
Shall I go? Okay, hi. I'm Tom Nuttall from The Economist, and I've got a question about the proposal to issue a giant loan to Ukraine against the frozen Russian assets in Euroclear, which now seems to be moving forward. It's going to be discussed at the summit next week. One of the questions that will confront European leaders as this takes shape is what sort of conditionality to attach to this loan. And I'd be interested to get the views of the participants on the panel of if this money, or if large parts of this money is going to be used to help replenish Ukrainian stocks, armament stocks, to what extent should buy European provisions be attached, should be part of that conditionality? To what extent should the Ukrainians just be able to decide to buy whatever it is that they need?
Thank you so much. Now over to Goran.
Thank you. Goran Bogusky, Hertie School. I really appreciate that comment up. Because actually that reflects the current cyberspace, but also it reflects quite a big part of population that, especially you on the political sense, you're overseeing. You know, a lot of people will not go and die for their country if they think in military. A lot of people actually feel defense, and there is an alternative political offer, in France and in Germany. One is called Alternative for Deutschland, the other one is called Rassemblement National. It will work on a non-defense clause. What's the answer from the politician? I'm sorry, I have to squeeze in one economic question. What happens with let us money? Of course, it's not let us money, but his report said that we're sitting on billions. And I heard a lot of various scenarios, but what about the savings of people, and what about those billions and trillions, actually 11 trillion in his report that Europeans are sitting, and what about using them for defense?
Okay, thanks so much. I will try to briefly summarize the questions because we have some acoustic.
Can we take one more, Monika? We had one from the beginning here being raised.
Let's take one more, and I hope that the panel won't kill me for that.
Thank you. I try to be very brief. The ambassador mentioned in his opening remarks that if we buy US products, we basically buy European security guarantees. And Mr. Röwekamp, you said something similar in your remarks too. Just very briefly, what makes you confident that this assessment is true? Thank you.
Okay, thanks so much. And sorry for the rush. So we have one question about the drones and whether the European answer was basically enough. Then we have one question about the comparison between the Cold War and now and the peace talks. Then we have a question from our colleague from The Economist about loans to Ukraine, right? Then we have another from Goran about basically the politics, the internal politics, so that you have competition in the country, like Alternative for Germany, for example, that is not willing to invest in defense, perhaps. And finally, the question about savings. How do we use savings to perhaps finance European defense? And the last question was whether we believe, if I may rephrase that, in US security guarantees when we buy from the US. And let's go with the reverse order. So Guntram, the floor is yours.
Perhaps on the question of comparing the 80s with now. I mean, the 80s. I mean, first of all, I do remember the 80s myself, and I do think that the situation now is actually more tense than it was in the 80s. And I mean, I do remember the sort of Pershing rearmament stories at the time, etc. But at that time, while we had Russian influence operations, we did not have massive drone incursions on critical infrastructure. We did not have the kind of level of tense confrontation that we are seeing now in the Baltic Sea and other places. So my view is in the 80s, and why did the Cold War end, and why did the Soviet Union collapse? And that's my historical reading, and I guess people can have different views on this, but I think the evidence is pretty clear that it's been in this armament race, Russia or the Soviet Union at the time was brought to the point where they couldn't compete, and the internal inconsistencies were just so big that the country then had to change course. So in that sense, I personally think deterrence works, and deterrence is the way forward, and non-deterrence or weakness is an invitation for further confrontation. So I think the only way to preserve peace at this point on the European continent is by having clear capabilities and clear strategies on how to use the capabilities. If you don't have capabilities, you invite trouble. I mean, that is my conviction on this point. And on the perhaps I take the private funding, or you want to? Oh, I leave that to you. Okay. So I leave that to you. Perhaps one then perhaps last point on the drone incursion. I mean, just to say the drone incursions, I mean, we heard the ambassador talk about some of them, but I mean, we have had, I think, more than 200 sort of drones over various objects in Germany, and nobody knows how to shoot them down or doesn't want to shoot them down, whatever. So I mean, this is pretty serious stuff, and I do think that one has to have a strategy. Now, when it comes to drones, I personally think it's relatively straightforward. And without major consequences if you shoot them down. And frankly speaking, the fact that we needed F-35 to bring down a few drones over Poland shows that we are basically not fully prepared. Yeah. But I have to say, when it comes to sort of the fighter jets coming to Estonia and so on, I mean, I thought some reactions also in the German political system. I saw, for example, Mr. Kiesewetter was saying, shoot them down directly. I mean, perhaps I'm paraphrasing a little bit. I'm a little bit more cautious, yeah, because I mean, you want to signal that you've seen them, you want to signal that you can sort of respond if needed, but you don't want to immediately shoot people down, right? I mean, I think we also shouldn't escalate too dramatically. That would be my view on this.
Thank you. And I should have said, please pick and choose, because we cannot answer all. No, you did it, but just for you, feel free to choose a question.
Yeah, I'll pick the question that is easiest for me as an economist. So I'll pick the question on what happened to Letta's money. If I understand what the question, you mean that the fact that savings in Europe, we save a lot of money, but we export a lot of this money in the US actually. But to be honest, we're not sitting on it. Investing it in the US, if you look at it from a rational perspective, it's totally rational to invest it in the US, because when you invest, you are looking for the best opportunities. You're looking to invest it where it's more profitable, and we know that the US economy is better than ours. It's much more innovative, so it's logical to invest in the US. Actually, I saw the other day some interesting fact. Is the fact that if you consider the typical portfolio of investment of European, it's actually not investing enough in the US. If you look at the size of the US economy and the market capitalization of the US in the world, actually we should, if we want to invest the best as we can, we should invest more in the US. Well, okay, that's not good for us to do that. But if you're looking at it only from an economic perspective, we should invest more in the US because it's more innovative. So the solution to make us invest more in Europe is to become as innovative as the US and as profitable as the US. And then there are the usual solution on how to become a more innovative economy, cut the red tape, We need the emergence of a real capital market union. We need to have venture capital in Europe to develop startups, etc. But something that maybe I want to highlight a bit more is that we need to have better innovation policies in Europe. Not talking about my own country, but our innovation policies are not the best. And actually, we just got a Nobel Prize in France a few days ago, and maybe we should follow his advice on innovation policies and improve our innovation policies, not to just spread around money across all companies, but having something a bit like what they have in the US with the DARPA. Where they really invest in the right companies to push them to innovate. Thank you.
Over to you.
Yeah, thank you very much for the questions. Let me start with the drones. I think at the moment the NATO defense ministers are meeting in Brussels, and they talk about a common common European drone wall, and I think it is very necessary. The good news is, yes, we were able to fight against 19 drones and 2 fight jets. But we see in Ukraine every day that this is not really the problem we would have in a military escalation. So we have to have a drone wall as well as Ukraine has one, or for example, Israel has one. So this is now rocket technology, but we have to increase our facilities. Not to use too expensive defense systems for fighting against one-way drones. So I think this is one lesson we learned from Ukraine. The second question was regarding the Cold War. So I never met out of Russia someone who wants war. The people want to have peace. And when you tell us we have to talk about peace, yes, my simple answer is it takes 2 to tango. So it is not a question whether Ukraine wants peace. It's not a question whether European people want to have peace. It is just the situation that Russia do not want to have peace. So, and this is why we do not have talks about peace. I'm very sure because I listen exactly to what Mr. Putin said in the past, and I think it is very clear after the meeting in the White House with Donald Trump, where I believed in that situation, this might be a window of opportunity to get ceasefire in Ukraine. I was in Ukraine the week after the meeting in the after the meeting of President Trump with President Putin, and I was very full of hope that this could be a solution: ceasefire and security guarantee for Ukraine by Europe and US. And so it was destroyed by Putin within a few days. So I do really agree, know that Mr. Putin do not want peace, not in Ukraine and not in Europe. That's my opinion. How can we use the frozen assets for Ukraine? I think we need a full-scale use for them, so no one better knows than them what they are needing. I think that's the current the actual discussion we have. They do really need long-range weapons. It is not possible to fight against thousands of drones in one night. So they have to destroy. Sorry for yes, I will stop after the third question. They will not be able to defend themselves against hundreds of drones. So the only way to defend themselves is to destroy the facilities and the starting ramps of those drones. And therefore, they need long-range weapons. And I think that is what we can do for them by using the frozen assets. So the AFD is a special panel. I think we can do it once more. Yes, and I do really, you ask whether, what about US security guarantees? So this is my experience. I have a trust in, as a German, I have the trust in US administration, and I have no doubt that it will continue. It is more difficult at the moment, but on a long range, there was a very sustainable guarantee for peace in Europe by the US Army and the US administration. And I hope it will continue, and I'm sure that it will continue. Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much. And the final word goes to you, Madame.
I agree with the most things my colleagues said, but I will focus one point. You spoke about the 80s. You spoke about competition between politicians, AfD, RN, etc. But the problem we have, I will focus not the problem, because it's a big value that we have in the European Union, and we don't speak enough about it. Since the Second World War, we try that never power breaks rules, right? And this is our problem now. There are a lot of neighbors like Putin who use power for defense their interest, even military powers. And we are a little bit long sometimes to give the right answer. And when the response of drones is not fast enough, we don't want escalation. We see if there is a basis to destroy. And this is really long, because all our systems, our European systems, are based on rules. And this is a value we defend. But we need also even diplomacy. But if you want to have a diplomacy, a serious diplomacy, you need to be my English is really a catastrophe. You need a strong military to be yes. And I agree with the innovation because we need a European DARPA. We need to take risks. Perhaps we are old societies, so they don't need, they don't want to take risks, but we have now to take our risks to defend our values. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's perfect ending. And I think now is the time to give the floor to Claeys before we thank our panelists, of course. So, now it's better. So again, I will try to keep this brief and not stand between you and the reception for too long, but let me just say how happy I am to be here today, also in my new capacity as the acting director of the Jacques Delors Center. Not only because today's discussion really touches upon one of the most urgent and important questions of our time, but because it was also truly excellent. The ambassador said it in the beginning, Europe is under threat and we need to reinvent ourselves. And today the discussion was on money and how we can spend money to jointly ramp up our defense capacities in Europe. But I think what really stood out to me and what really became clear is how cross-cutting this issue is. So it relates to simplification, a topic very important in Brussels at the moment. It relates to the infrastructure of our streets, technological independence, trade, and in particular of mindset. And a change in mindset not just of the governments and of the industry, but in particular of citizens. And the question, how do we debate with citizens and how do we convince citizens of the changes necessary? So thank you very much to our excellent panelists for your insight today and for the very good discussion. And of course to Monika for very expertly moderating it. And also for including the Polish perspective in our Franco-German discussions. And we will also continue these discussions at our Pariser Platz dialogue in December, where we'll discuss various of pressing issues for Franco-German relations. I would like to thank the embassy for hosting us today here, especially to Ambassador Delattre for his extraordinary hospitality, and his team at the embassy, François, Baptiste, and Melia, for the very good cooperation. I would also like to thank the Federal Foreign Office for making the Paris Platz Dialogue Series possible with their generous support. And of course, our team at the Jacques Delors Center for putting this event together, in particular Jan, Linda, and Peter, and of course, all of you who are here today, online and offline with us for the discussion. And if you allow me one very final remark, last year at Research Meets Politics, at this very same venue, we addressed another important topic for European security, which was how Europe can become competitive in the field of AI. And the keynote speech was given by no other than Philippe Aghion, who, as you probably all know, was awarded the Nobel Prize in Economics just the day before yesterday. So no pressure to our panelists today, but perhaps we can say the same about today's panel in the future. And now all that is left to say is that the reception is waiting outside, just directly at the exit, and I would very warmly like to invite you to join us and continue the conversations back there.
Vielen Dank. Ich gebe mal meine Karte. Jetzt kann ich mal nächstes Mal in Berlin vorbeikommen. Ja, gerne.